first met her, it felt like fate had brought us together. Our love story was nothing short of a fairy tale. We had met in college, both unaware of how our lives would intertwine in such a profound way. It wasn't love at first sight, but over time, as we got to know each other, I realized she was the one I wanted to spend my life with. She was kind, thoughtful, and understanding, everything I had ever dreamed of in a partner. We shared so many moments of laughter, dreams, and hopes for the future. When we decided to get married, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Love marriages are rarely accepted by everyone, but we were determined to prove that love was stronger than any obstacle. Our families weren't entirely happy with our decision, but we didn't care. Our love was our own, and nothing could break that bond. We held on to each other as we built our life together. The first few years of our marriage were blissful. We learned about each other's quirks, dreams, and flaws. I always admired her resilience and the way she supported me in every challenge I faced. We built a home full of love, and even though there were difficulties, we always found a way to work things out. 5 years had passed since our wedding, and it felt like we had come so far. We had settled into a routine, comfortable with each other's presence. But somewhere beneath the surface, I started to feel something was amiss. Life had settled into a comfortable pace, but that comfort sometimes gave way to complacency. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it was as if the spark in our marriage had dimmed. Still, I loved her more than anything. She was my heart, my soul, my world. I thought we had everything we needed. But little did I know, everything was about to change. It was a regular week when everything took an unexpected turn. She had to travel to another city for work, a trip that wasn't planned but was necessary for her professional growth. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was always dedicated to her job, and I knew she would return within a few days. But the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. There was something about the timing of the trip that didn't sit right with me. I tried to dismiss the feeling, thinking it was just my mind overworking itself. I tried to reach her a few times during the trip, but she was often busy with meetings and conferences. It wasn't unusual for her to be tied up with work, but as the days went by, I began to feel a sense of distance growing between us. One evening, I received a call from her. It wasn't the usual excited, loving tone she always had when calling me. Her voice was distant, almost cold. She said everything was fine, but I could hear something in her voice that made me uneasy. I brushed it off and tried to reassure myself that she was just tired from the trip. Days later, I found out that she had met someone while in the city. I didn't know the details at first, but something about the way she spoke about the trip felt off. I pressed her on it, and eventually, she confessed that she had met someone during her trip. This man was a colleague of hers, someone who had been working with her for a while. At first, it sounded innocent enough, but as I listened to her talk, I began to sense that it wasn't just a friendly meeting. She talked about him in a way that made me feel uncomfortable. Her voice, which had once been filled with warmth for me, now carried a certain inflection when she mentioned him. It was subtle but unmistakable. She had fallen for him. I remember the moment I found out. It was like the ground beneath me had shifted, and the world as I knew it came crashing down. I had always trusted her completely. She had been my partner, my best friend, and I had never questioned her loyalty. But as the truth came to light, my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. The man she had met during her business trip had become more than just a colleague. He had become the person she was emotionally invested in. At first, she denied it. She told me that she had just gotten carried away in the moment, that it was nothing serious. But the more I pressed, the more I realized that it wasn't just a fleeting attraction. She had allowed herself to fall for him, and in doing so, she had betrayed me. She had broken the sacred trust we had built together. I didn't know how to respond. The pain was overwhelming. The nights were the hardest. I would lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to grasp what had just happened. My mind replayed the moments we had shared, the laughter, the plans we had made for the future. How could everything feel so real and genuine when it was all just a lie? I kept asking myself, was our marriage just a facade? Had everything we shared been nothing but a beautiful illusion? I struggled with the idea of divorce. My love for her hadn't just disappeared. Even after everything, I couldn't stop loving her. My heart was torn in two. On one hand, I felt betrayed beyond measure. On the other, I still cared for her deeply. I had always promised myself that love would conquer all, that no matter what, we would face challenges together. But how could I face this betrayal? How could I live with the thought of her with someone else? The thought of a divorce felt like the ultimate failure. I never imagined that I would be in this position, contemplating the end of my marriage. The idea of life without her, without the love we had shared, seemed unbearable. But as the days went by, I realized that I couldn't keep living in this pain. I was suffocating under the weight of the betrayal. My mind told me that divorce was the only way to heal, but my heart wasn't ready to let go. It was an internal battle I couldn't win. I needed answers. I needed her to be honest with me. I needed her to understand the damage that had been done. But I also knew that I couldn't live in this limbo forever. Divorce seemed like the only way out, but every time I thought about it, my heart would break even more. I didn't want to lose her, but I couldn't live with the fear that she would hurt me again. One evening, I decided to talk to her. I needed to understand the full extent of what had happened. I needed her to be honest with me, to tell me everything. I couldn't bear living in uncertainty anymore. I asked her to sit down and talk. Her face was pale, and she seemed afraid. I could see that she had been crying, and I knew she was struggling with her own guilt. As she spoke, I could feel the weight of her words. She apologized again and again, saying that she didn't know how things had gotten so out of control. She explained that the man had made her feel special, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She told me she never meant to hurt me, but the damage had already been done. I could see the regret in her eyes, but I couldn't stop myself from asking the one question that haunted me. Why? Why had she let this happen? Why had she betrayed me? She promised me that she would never see him again, that she would cut all ties with him. She swore that she loved me, and that this was a mistake she would never repeat. I didn't know if I could believe her. I didn't know if I could trust her again. But despite the pain, despite the hurt, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could get through this. And so, I made the decision to give her another chance, to try and rebuild our life together. When she first told me what had happened, my world came crashing down. The realization that the woman I had trusted above all else had betrayed me was almost more than I could bear. But as she sat across from me, her hands trembling, her eyes filled with tears, something shifted inside me. I could see how deeply regretful she was. Her voice cracked as she explained the emotional void she had been feeling, how she felt disconnected, unloved, and how this man had given her the attention and affection she had craved. But it wasn't just that. What hurt the most was the depth of her betrayal. It wasn't just a fleeting moment of weakness. She had fallen for him. She had allowed herself to be swept away by the attention he gave her, and for a moment, she had let that affection override the love we had built together. She admitted that she never meant for it to go as far as it did, but at some point, she found herself unable to resist the temptation, telling herself it was just one moment, one mistake. But in reality, it was far more than that. She had let herself fall for another man, and the emotional weight of that was now too heavy to bear. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen, John," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was just lost for a moment, but now I see how badly I've hurt you, and I don't know if I can ever fix this." Her confession felt like a knife to my chest. Each word that came out of her mouth only deepened the wound. It was a struggle to hold back my tears, but I couldn't let myself break down. I had to be strong, even though everything inside of me was screaming in pain. I wanted to scream at her, to shout out in anger, but instead, I found myself sitting there, completely numb. I had spent 5 years of my life with her, believing in our love, and yet here I was, sitting in front of the woman who had destroyed everything I had ever believed in. As days passed, I found myself in a constant battle. I loved her. I couldn't deny that. My heart ached for her every time I saw her, even though my mind kept reminding me of the betrayal. She had apologized countless times, telling me how sorry she was, that she would do anything to make things right, to fix the broken pieces of our relationship. But I couldn't just forgive her. Not yet. I couldn't forget the images in my mind. Her with him, the way she must have looked at him, the way she had allowed herself to fall for him, to let him take her in. The anger was still there, burning inside me. The betrayal stung every time I saw her. How could I ever trust her again? How could I allow myself to be vulnerable with her when I knew that, at some point, she had chosen someone else over me? The idea of divorce lingered in my mind, but I couldn't bring myself to go through with it. I kept asking myself, was this marriage worth saving? Was there even anything left to salvage? I wanted to believe that our love was strong enough to survive this, but the wounds were still too fresh. I was torn between holding on and letting go. I couldn't find peace no matter how hard I tried. I spent sleepless nights, trying to make sense of it all. My heart longed for the woman I married, the woman who had once made me feel complete. But the reality of her actions kept pulling me back. I wanted to forgive her, I truly did. But could I ever fully move past this? Would I ever truly be able to trust her again? After much soul-searching and sleepless nights, I made a decision. I would stay. For now. It wasn't an easy decision, and I knew it wasn't the perfect solution. The pain was still there, gnawing at me every day, but a part of me couldn't let go. I still loved her. She was still my wife, the woman I had chosen to spend my life with. But staying wasn't easy. I was walking through each day with a heavy heart. I still had moments of anger, of betrayal, and I knew that things would never be the same again. We tried to work things out, to rebuild what had been broken, but every time I saw her, a part of me would ache. Every time she reached for my hand, I wondered if she had reached for someone else's first. We went to counseling, hoping that it would help heal the wounds. She told me time and time again that she regretted everything, that she had learned from her mistakes. I wanted to believe her, but with each passing day, the weight of her actions made it harder to ignore. It wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was the way she had shattered everything we had built, the trust that had taken years to develop.
But I decided to give it one more chance. I didn't want to give up on her, on us, just yet. We would try to rebuild, piece by piece. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but maybe, just maybe, with time, we could find our way back to each other. One day, I found myself face to face with the reality of our situation once more. My wife had promised that she would cut ties with the man, that she wouldn't let herself fall into the same temptation again. But a moment came when I saw a text message on her phone, and for the first time my heart sank. It was from him. I confronted her immediately. The emotions erupted, the anger, the pain, the frustration. She tried to explain, tried to reassure me, but the damage had already been done. Why? I asked her, voice shaking with the weight of everything. Why would you do this again, after everything we've been through? She cried, apologized, and said she hadn't meant for it to happen. But the trust that had been so fragile before was now completely shattered. I had wanted to believe that she could change, that we could heal. But with this new betrayal, I knew I couldn't keep living this lie. With a heavy heart, I made the decision to end the marriage. Divorce wasn't something I had ever imagined for us, but the trust was gone. She had broken it, and despite her apologies, I couldn't find it in myself to trust her again. I loved her, but love wasn't enough to fix what had been broken. The days leading up to the divorce were the hardest. I didn't want to lose her, but I couldn't keep living in the shadow of her betrayal. My heart ached for the life we had lost, for the future that would never be. We filed for divorce, and as it became final, I felt an emptiness that I couldn't explain. It wasn't relief, but it wasn't pain either. It was a quiet sadness, a grief for the life we could have had, for the love we once shared. We tried to remain civil for the sake of our future, for any potential children we might have had, but it wasn't the same. In time, I began to heal. It was a long journey, one filled with emotional scars that would never fully fade. But I realized that I had to let go, for my own well-being. I couldn't keep living in the past, holding on to a dream that no longer existed. With each passing day, I began to move forward. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I missed her, but I had learned to trust myself again. And maybe, just maybe, I could find happiness without her.
Thank you for watching, and if you haven't subscribed my channel yet, please do so and press the notification bell. This way, you'll stay updated with more shocking real-life stories.